You're on a spaceship, drifting through deep space with a crew you think you know. Except some of them aren't human. There's a parasitic species called the Gnosia. Their goal? Survive, blend in, and take out the humans on the ship. Every day, the crew debates, watches each other, and votes on who goes into cold sleep, basically freezing them out of the loop. And if they don't get rid of the Gnosia, the day just resets, again and again. The crew includes Setsu, calm, thoughtful, and experienced with loops. SQ, unpredictable, energetic, and always keeping everyone on edge. And Rakio, really smart, but so arrogant that people immediately find him suspicious. Then there's Yuri. She wakes up with no memory of herself or how she got there. Everyone immediately eyes her like she's suspicious. Most assume she's faking it, but Setsu doesn't. Yuri just seems genuinely lost, confused, not manipulative. That's enough for Setsu to trust her, even if it's risky. From there, the group does what they have to, voting people into cold sleep. It's messy. Everyone's looking for tells, odd behavior, or any hint someone might be Gnosia. But paranoia runs high. Every glance, every word, every hesitation could mean something. Or nothing at all. As the crew shrinks, tension grows. Arguments flare, alliances form, trust becomes a dangerous gamble. One wrong vote and someone could be eliminated for no reason. Eventually, it comes down to Yuri and SQ, and of course, SQ reveals herself as Gnosia, not a victory. Just a reminder, in this world, surviving isn't about being right. It's about reading people, managing suspicion, hoping you don't get fooled. Even knowing what's coming doesn't make it any easier. Then, of course, the loop resets. Same ship, same people, same situation. But this time, Yuri remembers everything. The votes, the tension, and that SQ was Gnosia last time. She thinks she knows the answer and tries to steer things early. She talks to the others, hints that SQ is dangerous, tries to get people on her side. But Rakio shuts that down. Just because someone was Gnosia in the last loop doesn't mean they are now. Roles change. Memory alone isn't enough. Yuri realizes she has to relearn the situation every single loop. Around this time, Gina starts backing Yuri up. She believes Yuri about the loop and agrees that SQ seems suspicious. At first, it feels like relief. Someone on your side is huge. But trust is dangerous here. In a game built around deception, being nice could mean someone is genuinely good, or that they're manipulating you. Yuri's stuck doubting everyone, realizing that in Gnosia, the safest-looking people might be the most dangerous. The next loop is even harder. There are now two new people, Stella and Shigemichi. More people means more conversations, more conflicting testimonies, more ways for suspicion to spread. Shigemichi is impulsive and loud, constantly creating chaos, while Stella is quiet, calm, and observant. She's hard to read, always taking notes on everyone. It makes social deduction way trickier, and now there are two Gnosia instead of one. One Gnosia is hard enough to catch. Two means every deduction has to account for a hidden liar covering tracks or throwing suspicion elsewhere. Even when you think you've figured it out, chances are high that you're wrong. Then there's Rakio. Brilliant, sharp, practically built to survive. But he's arrogant, condescending, and overconfident. In a world ruled by paranoia, that makes him suspicious to everyone else. People vote him into cold sleep immediately before he can even use his skills. The irony? The one person who could save everyone keeps getting removed for just being himself. Classic Gnosia chaos. Wrong people get voted out. The loop resets again. But here's where Yuri starts noticing something subtle. Whenever a Gnosia claims to be human, there's a tiny glitch, a small hesitation, a weird twitch. No one else notices, but Yuri realizes she can now identify the Gnosia. Of course, knowing isn't the same as solving it. She tries to convince the others, but no one listens. They're stuck in paranoia and assumption. Knowledge alone isn't enough in a social system, and that's what makes this game brilliant. Yuri can see through the lies, but the rest of the crew is still trapped by fear and instinct. Then the loop resets again, and this time Yuri wakes up as the engineer. Suddenly, she has a tool to act on her insight. During the night, she can check one person and know 100% whether they're Gnosia. Absolute certainty. But it's tricky. One person per night forces her to prioritize. And the loop is still crowded with paranoia, misinformation, and two Gnosia, so one confirmation doesn't immediately fix everything. Yuri can see through the lies, but she still has to navigate the social chaos, trying to gain trust while staying alive. This is where the game gets truly interesting. It's no longer just guessing who's the Gnosia, it's strategy, timing, psychological insight, knowing who is dangerous, knowing who to check, and knowing that even certainty won't save you if the rest of the crew doesn't believe you. Yuri has power now, but the stakes have never been higher, and this is where Rakio really makes things messy. Rakio claims to be the engineer too, and that's a huge problem because everyone knows there's only supposed to be one engineer on board. So now the crew's stuck. One of them is lying, but they don't know who. Rakio's confidence doesn't help. He's aggressive about it, talks down to everyone, and acts like it's obvious he's telling the truth. Yuri, on the other hand, doesn't overplay it. She stays calm, explains what she knows, and slowly convinces the crew that she's not bluffing. Eventually, they vote Rakio into cold sleep. But here's the catch. Even after he's gone, they still can't tell if he was Gnosia. There's still another one on board, which means Yuri isn't fully cleared either. For all they know, she could still be lying. So instead of fixing the problem, it just shifts the suspicion. And that's the worst part. Even when Yuri makes the right call, even when she survives the vote, the doubt never fully disappears. In Gnosia, being believed once doesn't mean you're trusted. It just means you lived another day. After that, things finally start to click. With Rakio gone and Yuri using her engineer checks carefully, the crew is able to piece things together. They catch the other Gnosia. This time it's real. No doubt, no ambiguity. The threat is gone. Humans win. And for a second, it feels like that should be it. Yuri goes to sleep thinking, okay, we did it. If the Gnosia are gone, the loop should stop. But then she wakes up. The loop didn't end. And that's when it really hits her. This was never just about finding the Gnosia. Eliminating them doesn't fix anything. The time loop is still there, still resetting no matter what she does. Now Yuri's not just trying to survive or outplay the Gnosia. She's stuck asking a way bigger question. What actually ends this? If winning doesn't stop the loop, then what does? And that's where the story stops being just a social deduction game and starts feeling unsettling. Because even when Yuri does everything right, she's still trapped. This is when Setsu finally comes clean. Up until now, Setsu's always seemed like she knows more than she lets on. Calm. Careful. Like she's been carrying something heavy the whole time. Eventually, she pulls Yuri aside and tells her what she knows about the time loop. Setsu explains that the loop exists because of something called the Silver Key, an intelligent organism that feeds on information. The crew and all these repeating days are part of how it learns. Every loop gives it more data. Who people trust, who they turn on, how they lie when they're scared. Even when the Gnosia are eliminated, the loop doesn't stop. Because the Silver Key isn't done yet. That's also why the Gnosia exist. They force conflict. They push people into making impossible choices, and all of that feeds the Silver Key exactly what it wants. But Setsu is clear about one thing. This isn't the full picture. There's more to it, more answers, more layers to how the loop works and why Yuri and Setsu are stuck in it. They learn more later, but for now, this is all they know. As the loops keep going, Yuri and Setsu meet more crew members, and each one changes the game. Chippy seems super chill with a cat on his neck until he turns out to be Gnosia. Otome, the talking beluga whale, is calm and kind, which makes people hesitate to suspect her. And Xiaming won't leave his room at first. When he finally comes out, he's Gnosia too. Even quiet or friendly behavior can hide danger. Later loops add special roles that make things even trickier. The doctor can check someone in cold sleep to see if they're human or Gnosia. The engineer can check someone and know for sure if they're Gnosia. Both roles are huge threats to the Gnosia, so the aliens try to confuse everyone by pretending to be the doctor or engineer. It gets even more complicated because there can now be multiple Gnosia. That means you could have a real engineer and a fake engineer, and a real doctor and a fake doctor. The problem is, the real engineer might say this person is Gnosia, while a fake engineer says the opposite. The same goes for the doctor. Suddenly the crew has to figure out who's lying and who's telling the truth. And even certain information can be fake. It makes trust almost impossible and adds a huge layer of tension. And because there are so many loops, anything can happen. In one loop, the crew trusts the wrong person, and while they're in cold sleep, a Gnosia attacks and takes over the ship. Moments like this show that even if you think you know what's coming, the loop can throw a total curveball. Every decision matters and paranoia never goes away. Through all this, Yuri realizes that surviving isn't just about spotting the Gnosia. She has to read people, notice patterns, and figure out who to trust when even the rules themselves can be manipulated. Every new crew member, every special role, and every loop adds another layer of paranoia, showing that in Gnosia, human instincts, fear, trust, and doubt, can be just as dangerous as the aliens themselves. So now let's go back to the Silver Key. After Yuri finds out about it, everything shifts. The loops aren't just weird time repeats anymore, and they're her chance to learn about everyone on the ship. She starts talking to her crewmates, paying attention to how they act, what they say, and how they react under stress. Every little detail counts because all of it feeds the Silver Key and brings her closer to breaking free. And man, the crewmates' backstories are dark. Take SQ, for example. She was actually created as a backup body for her mom, Manon, who wanted to stay young forever. SQ is literally half her mom and half herself. She has some of Manon's memories and personality traits, but she also developed her own identity. She wasn't supposed to have a personality at all. She was meant to be obedient, soulless, the perfect vessel. But she failed. That made her a failed experiment in the eyes of everyone around her. And here's the wild part. Manon can actually switch between her vessels whenever she wants, which means she can take control of SQ's body at times. That's why SQ sometimes acts strangely or seems out of character. Part of her is still herself, and part of her is her mom. On top of all this, SQ is basically a baby in terms of experience. She's only about a year old, and before now she spent her whole life in an incubation pod. No memories, no real experiences, just suddenly thrown into this chaotic ship with a bunch of strangers. You can see why she's so desperate to survive. Another character with a really surprising backstory is Kurkushka. At first, she seems like just a quiet, innocent crewmate, but we eventually find out she isn't a real person at all. She's actually a robot, created and controlled by Manon. Because of that, she can't speak. Instead, she uses gestures, smiles, and little actions to communicate, which makes her seem innocent and harmless. It's kind of eerie once you realize what's going on, but it also shows how much the crew's environment is manipulated. Kurkushka's existence is a reminder that not everyone on the ship is what they seem, and that even artificial life is caught up in the Silver Key's endless observation. One of the loops that really stood out was when Yuri had to play as a Gnosia. It was intense, but also eye-opening. She got to see the ship from the Gnosia perspective, and what she realized was really interesting. Not all Gnosia are evil. They're just trying to survive, just like everyone else. That perspective made her think about the crew differently, and it gave her even more insight to feed the Silver Key. It's loops like this, and characters like SQ that show you the Silver Key isn't just watching what people do, it's learning what they fear, what they've lost, and how fragile they really are. And Yuri? She's there, quietly taking notes, learning more about the people around her piece by piece, loop by loop. So here's the crazy part. Once Yuri finally fills the Silver Key with all the information about the crew and the loops, everything starts to make sense. This is where we find out why the loops were happening in the first place. In the original timeline, Yuri was actually killed by a Gnosia on the very first day. Since the Silver Key didn't get the information it needed from Yuri, like details about the crew and their choices, it created a loop. Basically, it kept Yuri alive over and over again, so it could gather all the missing data. And here's the wild twist. Because of that, there are now two Yuris. The original Yuri, on the one who was killed, and the looping Yuri, the one we follow through all the loops. The duplicate exists just to fix the timeline and make sure the Silver Key gets all the information it needs. So the loops aren't just punishment or random weirdness. They're the Silver Key's way of patching the timeline, making sure it can understand everything. Yuri isn't just trying to survive. They're literally the one the Silver Key created to observe, learn, and set everything right. While Yuri is slowly figuring out why they've been stuck in these loops, Setsu is doing her own detective work, trying to figure out who's actually causing the Gnosia chaos. And that's when they put the pieces together. It's Manon, the soul of SQ's mother, hopping between bodies. Basically, she's the one messing with everyone's minds. They realize she's the patient zero of the Gnosia, the original source of the virus that's spreading to everyone else. And then comes the light bulb moment. Yuri and Setsu realize they can actually tackle both problems at once. There are two things they need to fix. First, the bug. That's the fake Yuri that exists because of the paradox. Second, the virus. Manin herself, who's been causing the Gnosia chaos by jumping between bodies. Once they understand that, everything starts to click. It's not just about surviving or solving loops anymore. It's about targeting the root causes. And this is what makes the final part so tense, because now they actually have a plan that could end the loops for good. So this is where Yuri and Setsu pull off one of the smartest moves in the entire story. They realize they can't just fight Manin directly. She's too manipulative, too slippery, and she can jump between bodies. So instead of attacking her, they trick her. First, they use bait. Manin's biggest fear has always been death. That's the entire reason she created vessels in the first place. She's terrified of aging, terrified of disappearing. So Yuri and Setsu approach her while she's still hiding inside SQ's body and offer her exactly what she's always wanted. True immortality. Then comes the switch. They convince her to move her consciousness out of SQ's human body and into the Kukrushka robot body. They frame it like this perfect solution. As a machine, she'll never age, never decay, and she'll finally have a vessel that won't develop its own personality or fail like SQ did. It sounds like everything she's been chasing. And to sweeten the deal, they offer her the silver key. They tell her the key can open a path to a new universe, a fresh world where she can rule however she wants. For someone as arrogant and power-hungry as Manin, that's irresistible. It plays directly into her ego. And, of course, it's a trap. The second she transfers into the robot body and takes the key, Yuri and Setsu activate the door to another dimension. Manin thinks she's stepping into paradise. But she's actually being exiled. She's sent into a void timeline, trapped in the Kukrushka body, looping forever, completely alone. No humans to control, no vessels to jump into, no one to infect. Just endless isolation. And honestly, it's kind of poetic. The person who caused endless loops and suffering for everyone else ends up trapped in her own personal loop. It's not just a defeat, like it's a narrative payoff. The story doesn't just remove the villain, it makes her face the exact fear she tried to escape. Now that Manin is gone, everything changes. She was the source of the Gnosia infection, the patient zero. Once she's exiled and removed from the timeline completely, the chain reaction she caused just stops. The virus doesn't spread. The paranoia never starts. The deadly game never begins. And because of that, the original timeline, the one where Yuri was killed by a Gnosia on the first day, gets erased. It simply never happens. There's no paradox anymore. No bug. No broken data the universe needs to fix. Yuri isn't destined to die in a medical pod. He just lives. And that's what makes the ending hit so hard. After all the loops, all the betrayals, all the resets, Yuri finally gets something normal. A real timeline, a real future. A chance to exist on the ship without being an experiment, a duplicate or a tool of the Silver Key. He can build friendships. He can talk to Setsu without worrying about being erased. He can exist in a world that isn't collapsing around him. It's quiet, it's simple, but that's the point.